Hey, thanks for tuning in. We are Creative Combinations Montana, a husband and wife team, Kelsey and Nate, that design and make metal art, metal and wood furniture, and functional art out of our garage in northwest Montana. In this video, we're going to be going over a privacy screen build that we did a couple months back earlier this spring using our Mount Vaught design. So we got the inspiration for this design up the North Fork Road along the Flathead River. And so the peak is in Glacier National Park, and we got the photograph from a pullout kind of around the Camas Bridge area up the North Fork Road. And so here is a picture. Kelsey is working on the design work on the computer. So we use our adventure photos as references, and then she goes through and she creates the cut files that we use to create our pieces. So once we have the cut file, I upload them on our CNC machine and we do the cutting. And so that's what you're seeing here. We are cutting this design out of 14 gauge steel, mild steel. So it's a little bit less, or it's right around a 1/16 of an inch thick if you're not familiar with gauge steel. So a little bit about this project. So we had a client reach out on a Facebook ad that I had posted, and they kind of saw our privacy screens and they wanted to get something because they had a new wellhead put in on their property. And looking out, I think it was their kitchen window, they looked out and they were just looking at this gigantic wellhead. It had like a power box next to it and everything. And they live in this gorgeous area with a lot of trees and great views, but every time they looked out their window, the only thing they could see is this wellhead. So they reached out to us and we took our Mount Vaught design, and we had done a screen with this design previously, but it was a little bit smaller than what they had wanted. So we worked with them to figure out an exact size that they wanted. We ended up going 4 feet wide by about 6 feet tall for the screen panel itself. And then I did have a little bit more extra height with the feet. But we designed this that way they could bury it into the ground and put it right in front of their wellhead. That way they weren't just staring at this wellhead every time they look out the window. So jumping back into the actual build here, so after I got everything cut out, I had to go through and remove all the cut residue. So that's what you were watching earlier. And now I'm going through on the cold cut saw and I am cutting all of the steel tubing that is going to make up the surround for this privacy screen. So cutting it out of 14 gauge sheet metal, it is a little bit flexible still, and so that's why I will go around and I'm going to weld the 1 inch by 1 inch square tubing to each side, and then what I'm grinding there, the 1 inch by 2 inch square tubing, is actually going to be the base and the feet. So we'll get to that a little bit later in the video, but right now I'm just going through and I am deburring it, getting all those cut edges off and kind of getting everything prepped for welding. I'm also going to go ahead and punch a couple holes. These 2 pieces of tubing are going to be the feet. And I put a couple holes that way, even though you're burying it into the ground, it adds another option to add a stake. We get some high winds up in here and you definitely don't want these things toppling over. So I had a couple other small pieces of steel to cut. These are just so I can cap the tops of this tubing because this top is going to be exposed. So that's all I'm doing right now is I'm just going to cap that. And then I'm going to go ahead, get it all TIG welded, and then I'll grind it all off, buff it, and sand it. That way it looks all nice and smooth for the finished product. Right now I'm just kind of finagling a little bit to get that nice and flat, because when you're doing seamless, when you're going to grind all your weld off, you do want to make sure to get everything flat. That way it's not dished and looking all weird. So there is a little bit of a technique there to make sure that it looks nice in the end, kind of like this. You don't have any divots, you don't have any pinholes or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get all my parts palm sanded before I do any of the welding. I just find it a little bit easier to do it pre-welding. It makes for a lot cleaner welding, and then you don't have as much cleanup at the end of your project. So right now I am going through and tack welding everything. So I'm going to get those side supports tack welded on to the main design itself. And it's a little bit of a heat game doing this because welding, it adds heat. Obviously, you're melting the steel together, but anytime you put heat into metal, it's going to want to warp. So you do have to be pretty careful kind of how you weld things, make sure everything's clamped and held straight. That way you don't end up with a gigantic banana by the end of it. So after I got those side supports tacked on, now I'm working on the actual feet themselves. As you can see, I have a couple, it's kind of a funky joint here because you got 1x1 tubing coming down, meeting up with two pieces of 1x2 tubing. So once I got all that welded, I went through and I sanded and I buffed all that off. Quite a bit of sanding and buffing, but I think it makes it look really nice because then it's a super clean, seamless look, as you can see there, where you don't really see any of that welding. And there is a little bit of a technique there. You can't just like weld it and grind it all off and then be done, because you've got to really make sure to get in there and get
Hi,
full
Opie.
penetration on those welds. That way you're
How are
not
you?
grinding all your strength off. So here's Opie Dog. She was coming in, letting me know it was raining outside. She wanted to go in, so take a little break, let her in, and then we'll get right back to it.
Go let her inside.
All right, so here I'm getting the actual feet welded on. So this is what the screen's going to be standing on. And then these feet here, I did make it a little bit long. That way, as I mentioned earlier, this can get buried into the ground. So thanks so much for tuning in. Again, my name is Nate. We are Creative Combinations Montana. My wife Kelsey and I, we design and make metal art, metal and wood furniture, and functional art out of our garage in Columbia Falls, Montana. If you've been enjoying this video and you want to see a little bit more on our screens, I do have what we are calling Art Talk Uncut, and that is roughly a 5 or 10 minute YouTube video where Kelsey and I, we just go through, we'll feature one of our art pieces or furniture pieces, and we just talk a little bit about the piece itself, the inspiration that led to the design, and what its intended purpose is. But if you're interested, I do have a privacy screen edition. I believe it's episode 4. I'll have to double check on that, but I'll leave a link to the in the description. So if you want to learn a little bit more about some of these pieces, feel free to head over and check out that video. At this point, I'm all done with the fabrication. Not sure what I'm doing there. Contemplating life a little bit, I guess, making sure I did okay. But we're going to get this thing all loaded up and we're going to take it over to Kalispell to get powder coated. I'm not set up to do powder coating, so I do outsource that. We've got a company in Kalispell that really helps me out, and they do a great job shooting that powder. So we're going to do a matte black powder coating on this. So after I get it all loaded up, we'll take it down there, get it powder coated, and then bring it back for a photo shoot. And then after that, it'll be deliver it to the client and we will be all wrapped up. And if you're interested in checking out more of our designs and art pieces, head over to our website. We've got examples of our work on there. We also have a little bit more about us, and we even have an online shop where we ship a lot of our pieces. So you can find a link to that in our description, www.creativecombinationsmt.com. So here we are, we're just going to take this thing and do a little bit of a photo shoot. So here's the finished piece with that powder coating. Here is one more picture of the design work. So this is Mount Vaught there on the left, and there is the finished screen. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Let me know what you thought of the video in the comments. Let me know if you have any suggestions for me, what you want to see in these videos. I'm excited to make more. And we will be doing Art Talk Uncut. Those episodes will be dropping on Sundays, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, happy adventuring. Hope you get out, have fun on this beautiful earth that we all call home. And until next time.